with me, Chris Tuck. So we are live here in the studio and we are live on Facebook Live. So I hope some of you can join me in today's show. Welcome everybody. So last week, guys, we were talking about bullying and we were discussing all types of bullying. We were discussing the impact of bullying. We were discussing what we can do about changing societal attitudes to bullying as well. So I'm going to do a recap today. I've got lots to get through. I've got reports coming out of my head. I've got personal experiences to share, and I'm also going to be joined at 3 o'clock by Lynn Collett, who is a survivor of all forms of abuse, and I just want to hear and share her story with you all today. So Lynn is joining me at 3 o'clock. I'm on my own here in the studio today for the first time ever, so I'm just hoping that I'm recording everything on the radio show perfectly and Facebook Live is happening and everything is happening as it should. So please bear with me. It's quite exciting really being on my own because I just have to get on with it. Hi everybody on Facebook Live, welcome. So what I found is last Tuesday when I spoke about bullying, it took a lot out of me because I'm quite emotionally involved in this subject, purely because I was bullied as a child myself, at home through childhood abuse, mental and physical and sexual abuse, and also at school, just because I was different really. And we're going to go into that quite a lot today, reasons why people bully. But for me, bullying is just another word for abuse of some kind. Now, when I go into schools and I talk about my story, I try and downplay what I've gone through because I don't want to upset or traumatize some of the children that may not have gone through any kind of bullying or abuse, and I also don't want to re-traumatize those that are going through it. So I try and put my experiences in a format that they're going to understand and not frighten them. So I actually go in and do a bullying talk. Now, I've got my speech right here, guys, and this is the one that I deliver quite frequently in schools, just using my own experiences. And I thought it was a good place to start with recapping what bullying actually is. Now, bullies come in all shapes and sizes, and bullying is a form of abuse. Bullying is not just a relationship between the bully and the victim. It's a three-way relationship between the bully, the victim, and everyone who refuses to do anything about the bullying. Now, in this report that I'm going to discuss today, they call these people that don't do nothing, they call them bystanders. And it's about how do we make bystanders become upstanders? How do we make those bystanders become involved in order to protect the child that is being bullied, but also to get the bully the help that they need as well. Now, bullying will go something like this. The bully attacks either verbally or physically. The target tries to rise above and do nothing. So, i.e. the victim tries to just ignore, walk away, or just try not to antagonize the situation. No one intervenes. The bully ramps up the attack either there and then, or a day later, a week later, a month later, 3 months later. The victim tries to rise above and again do nothing. Again, no one intervenes. The bully further ramps up the attack. Hi everyone that's joined me on Facebook Live and who you may be listening on Power Extra Radio. via the app, until finally the victim may strike back, and unfortunately the bully knows what they are doing and they want this to happen. They want a reaction. They want the victim to potentially to get into trouble and make them see that not even those in authority will back them. This is what most bullies are hoping for. The difference nowadays with social media is that bullies can follow their victims 24/7 via different social media platforms. And for some victims, there is no getting away from what is happening to them. So why do people bully? And again, we're going to go into this in more detail. To me, it's about power and control, because they have none of this in their lives. It makes them feel good, and they may just be horrible people. Some may not be aware that what they are doing is bullying, and that is why education is actually key, because bullies need to be made accountable for their actions and consequences, and be given consequences for what they have done. And again, we can interchange this word bully with perpetrator, with abuser. Yeah. Now, there is a video on YouTube, and it's called the Burger King video, guys. And if you've not watched that, please take a look. I know quite a few schools have used this video, because what it depicts is a bunch of children, being unkind to a boy, and someone steps in and says to the gang of children, do you think that what you're doing is actually funny to the child, the victim who you are bullying? And the children were actually like, well, yeah, it is funny. But the kid that was being bullied didn't think it was funny. And that is when it becomes bullying, because the victim doesn't find it funny. They find it uncomfortable. They find it traumatizing or upsetting, or it starts, you know, picking away at their self-esteem. So just because some children may find something funny, it doesn't mean it's funny to the victim. And I think we all in society, who are parents or aunties or uncles or grandparents, whoever we are, if we are or have a relationship with a child, we should be teaching children that unkindness, even if you think it's funny, may not be funny to the person that is actually going through it, who is actually at the end of this bullying, this unkindness, whatever you want to call it, whatever you want to label it. Now, my daughter's not going to be very, what's the word, happy that I'm sharing this with you, but I want to, because I'm really proud of her and how she's dealing with things. Now, again, I wrote this over a year ago, but things unfortunately have not changed. So my daughter, who is nearly 15, she's now nearly 16, goes to a mixed secondary school. She only has a small group of very good friends. The school concerned, they said she needs to be more outgoing and make more friends, especially with her year group. Unfortunately, she has been bullied since year 5 by one of the popular girls in her year group and this girl's large group of friends. It took the form of name calling, taking her belongings, throwing things at her, bumping into her. Another person pretended to be her friend and pretended to be on her side, only to feed the bullies personal information that was then used against my daughter. Now, I have a very open and honest relationship with my daughter. I ask her about her school day and her relationships. When she told me what was happening, I asked her if she wanted me to intervene, and she said no, because it would only make matters worse. Now, unfortunately, because I've been bullied at school myself, I know that bullying only escalates if you do not do something about it. Now, this was a year ago. She was pushed into the bushes and held around the throat, and comments of a sexual nature were said to her. So when she told me this, as a parent, as her protector, as someone that's been through bullying and abuse, enough was enough. So I went to the school and I thought I sorted out the problem, and I kept a close eye on her and what was going on. Unfortunately, about 3 weeks ago, it started up again. And this is what happens. The bullies might get bored with somebody that they've been having a go at, bullying. They move on to someone else, and then they move on to someone else and move on to someone else, and then they will come back to someone that they've bullied before. And this is what has happened in this case, yet more innocent people have got involved, and these particular children didn't understand what they were doing. And as a collective, all of the group didn't really understand the impact of bullying on the victim. And it wasn't until it was explained to them via the school that we got letters of apologies from the bullies, that they really understood how they were making the victim, i.e. my daughter, feel. And they were very, very apologetic. So this is a huge learning curve, and this is portrayed in this report that I downloaded this morning. It's a 36-page report by Ditch the Label, and it's called the Annual Bullying Survey 2018. It's the annual benchmark of bullying in the United Kingdom. And I'm going to go through this report with you guys in a moment, because it's really, really an eye-opener and very useful, because it backs up everything that I said last week, and it backs up everything that I'm saying today. And you can also download it yourself, especially if you work in a school and you work in safeguarding, or you just have a natural interest in this, or if you know of a child that's being bullied, or your own child is being bullied, there are lots of resources on this website, ditchthelabel.org. Very, very interactive, lots of resources on this website. It's amazing. Anyway, going back to my daughter. Now, my daughter is a beautiful, clever, artistic, empathetic, sensitive young lady. And this is what I tell her all the time. I tell her it's better to have a few good, solid friends who support her, rather than people, you know, being a popular child, who have friends that are shallow and just want to tear them down. I also tell her not to walk on by if she sees someone else upset or being bullied. Now, this can be a big ask of a child that is 1, shy, 2, very sensitive, and 3, who has been bullied themselves. But I'm trying to instill in my daughter that if she ever is in a situation where she's been bullied, I want children of all ages to say, stop that, this ain't right, and help my daughter. That is what I want. And I want my daughter also to do the same to other children. Now, I have listened to a radio show recently, and it was about adults who were bullies at school. Most of the bullies that called in said that they were really sorry for the pain and trauma that they had caused their victims, and some of them said if they had known about the impact of their bullying, they would not have done it. So that's why I think it's really important that all schools all schools have an issue with bullying of some form, in some shape, of some form. Now, their policy, their safeguarding policy, should say zero tolerance to bullying and abuse of any kind. And they should back up this policy with actually implementing a course of action that is needed, whatever that looks like. And I think part of that education for the bullies is to understand the impact of what they have done has had on the victim. And if they go there again and bully and target that child again, then there should be tougher penalties for them doing that, because at the end of the day, they've had a pathway where they've had an opportunity to understand, say sorry, and stop doing it. And if they don't stop doing it, then they need to be taken to task again. But it seems to me that adult individuals who were bullies as children, now they are adults, they understand people's feelings, they understand the impact. They wish they did not bully when they were children. And also these apology letters that my daughter's received, it clearly shows that some of the children that have bullied her on particular incidences are really truly heartfelt sorry. And again, it's wait and see, really. Now, this report that I read, guys, right, I don't know if you agree with this or not. I had to read it a couple of times before I stopped cussing. It says bullying needs to be dealt with, not just from the bully's perspective. The victim needs help to understand, learn how to deal with it, and how to stop being a victim and stop exhibiting behaviour that attracts bullies. But more importantly, the victim needs responsible adults to help and support them through what they are experiencing. And again, I can understand the adult bit, but I'm not sure about the victim needs to learn how to stop being a victim and attracting bullies. Because apart from sticking up for yourself, i.e. hitting back or cussing back, what does standing up for yourself actually mean? So I'd be really interested to hear your comments about that particular paragraph that I've just read out. Now, there's a caveat to that paragraph. I know this seems hugely unfair because many people feel that it means we are attaching blame to the victim. But I see it as teaching someone the skills to be themselves, are confident, and have lots of self-worth. And by changing their behaviour, it will empower them to be assertive in all areas of their life as they grow into adulthood. So, yeah, but what do those skills look like? That's what I need to get to the bottom of. I need to understand how can we teach children to be full of self-confidence and self-worth and self-esteem and be assertive and stick up for themselves if they have been or are being bullied. So again, if there's any experts out there in bullying, I'd love to hear from you. Now, the impact of bullying. No one knows what is going on behind closed doors. As you guys know, I was brought up in a domestic violence household, 2 of them. I was mentally, physically, sexually abused and neglected. I was a vulnerable, scared, introverted girl. I am now 48 and I live with the impact of what happened to me at home and at school. With hindsight, I can tell you the impact it has had on me and others because I speak to people on a daily basis. And I've read lots of accounts out last week of people that have had a lifetime impact of abuse and bullying within the family home. whatever home looks like for them, and also them being bullied at school. So stress, overwhelm, fight, flight, freeze, flop, friend. This is how the brain reacts to being stressed from being bullied. You are in survival mode most of the time because you're wondering what's going to happen next. This will affect your ability to learn and to retain information. You fear for your own safety. Like the Burger King video on YouTube, guys, your self-esteem is chipped away at over time. You lose trust in people around you. You live in the part of your brain which is about surviving and not thriving. If you don't have the ability to speak to someone who can help sort out the situation like a responsible adult, your suppressed thoughts, feelings and emotions will impact your mental health and your physical health. It will impact your relationships with people. Many people who have been bullied often live with the impact in some form for the rest of their lives. Now, I want to talk about overcoming bullying in a little while. And today I will be talking about the law on smacking children, why it should be banned, and why I think it feeds into bullying and domestic violence and abuse of all kinds. I want to talk about discipline. What does actually the word discipline mean, and how can we discipline our children without smacking them? And I want to talk about how do we do things differently in the future, because at the end of the day, if we don't start having a conversation, actually before conversation, we need acknowledgement that bullying happens in all schools in some form. It does. We then need to look at the conversation, having the conversation. We need the conversation to happen. But once we've had the conversation and we've found what the problems are and the challenges are, we then need to start putting in solutions, and we need to start making change happen. And then we need to evaluate all the time to make sure that what is happening is what we want to happen and it hasn't taken a backslide. So I am expecting Lynn to be with us at 3 o'clock. So I just want to check to make sure that she's not with us yet. Right, okay, so guys, what I want to do first is go back to this report, Ditch the Label report, which is a 2018 report on bullying nationwide, and they've done this report for the last 6 years. And this particular report, they've evolved the report, but this particular report talks about bullying behaviours, it talks about the victims, it talks about the perpetrators, and it talks about bystanders. And it is really, really interesting. Now, 9,150 children from the age of 12 to 20 took part in this report. Now, it says, under the bystanders summary, 1 in 5 young people witnessed bullying. 50% of these witness bullying at least once per month. 59% of these bystanders felt bad. 39% said it upset them, but only 17% intervened. And the reasons for not intervening was they were scared of being victimised themselves, they did not have the right to intervene, and they didn't have the skills to actually intervene. So there is a lot of learning there straight away. We need to tell all children that if they see bullying, to step up and step in, or go and get the teacher or the adult, whoever. That is what I mean by stepping up and stepping in. They have the right to do that because they are stopping someone from being victimized. They're stopping someone from being hurt. And giving them the skills to actually intervene. What does it look like? If you see a fight, if you see or hear someone being verbally attacked, if you see someone being physically attacked, what does it look like to intervene? What are the steps? This is what we need to be giving our children. Now, from a victim's perspective, the report said 60% of the victims were mental health was impacted. 1 in 2 made them feel depressed. 34% had suicidal thoughts. 11% attempted taking their own lives as a result. 28% self-harmed. 15% developed eating disorders. 21% played truant from school. So guys, we've got people that are bystanders that don't know how to help, and what they've seen impacts them. We've got the victims whose mental health and physical health has been impacted greatly in most cases. And then we've got the perpetrators, the bullies. 44%, apparently, according to this report, feel guilty. They have remorse for what they've done. However, this is really quite frightening. 1 in 3 felt in control. 29% felt powerful. So we need to look at that and we need to go, why do they feel out of control? And why do they feel in control when they're bullying? Because that needs to break. That cycle, we need to break it. And what is it about victimizing somebody else, bringing someone else down to a level where they're reduced to a shadow of themselves? Why does that make someone else feel powerful? When we start having the answers to these questions, that's when we can start putting solutions in place. Now, bullying ruins lives. 1 in 2 people experience bullying. So that's 50% of us experience some form of bullying. Now, this report, which I said is a brilliant report, guys, I think you should download it. It looks at the different kinds of bullying: physical bullying, verbal bullying, cyberbullying, intimidation, social exclusion, online gaming bullying, and indirect bullying. Now, the one thing that I didn't see throughout the whole report was sexual bullying, but maybe that comes under some of these headings, even though it's not referred to at all in this report. Maybe it comes under some of that, and then it's taken as sexual assault of some kind, and it's escalated to the police. I don't know, because that report doesn't refer to it. I will actually get in touch with the founders of Ditch the Label and find out why the report doesn't, or at first glance doesn't appear to address peer-to-peer sexual bullying, sexting and all of that kind of thing. Right. Now, the report was really interesting for me because, let me just read you some of these things, guys, that I've highlighted. Now, Ditch the Label, guys, is a charity, and it's grown into one of the world's largest anti-bullying charities. While the annual bullying survey has become a key resource for policymakers, charities, educators, and people wishing to make the world a better place. Right, what else? Page 14. That's where I wanted to get to. Why do you think you were bullied? bear with me. I've got me pages all mixed up. Why do you think you were bullied? That was one of the questions. 57% said attitudes towards my appearance. 40% said attitudes towards my interests and hobbies. 24% said attitudes towards the clothes I wear. 20% being accused of being gay, lesbian when I'm not. 19% attitudes towards my mannerisms. 18% attitude towards my high grades. 14% attitudes towards my low grades. 11% attitudes towards my disability. And it goes on. Low household income, high household income, sexuality, my race, my culture, my religion, my gender identity. So basically, you can be bullied for absolutely anything just because you're different. Now, how frequently were you bullied? 10% said daily. 13% said several times a week. 9% once a week. 7% once a fortnight. 10% once a month. So at least all respondents in the last 12 months, 51% have been bullied at least once per month. Now, want to talk to you. Who bullied you, it says, the report. 59% said a classmate. 33% said somebody at school I don't know. And this is what I was saying to you earlier, guys. My daughter had people bumping into her in the corridor, in the canteen, that she didn't know. But what the bullies had done is whispered in their ear something, a rumour or whatever, and then my daughter had people bombarding her from all corners, just bashing into her and sending her flying for no reason whatsoever. 33% said they were bullied by an ex-friend. 29% said they were bullied by a close friend. And again, my daughter was very close to a particular person, and their relationship broke down, and that person became one of the main bullies. And you know, this is all borne out by what I'm saying and what I'm reading to you. And 29% said they were bullied by an enemy. And there's a quote here. My closest friends turned me away so that they didn't get bullied. This is where we've got to teach our kids, guys, as parents or as a relative to a child. We need to teach our children that bullying's just not right. It's morally wrong. It has a massive impact on a victim's life. And therefore, you know, if they think that they're being bullied or they're going to be bullied and they've got to drop a friend because someone tells them to, that ain't the right thing to do. We need to be having these conversations with our children. Now, I want to read you a few people's stories from this report. Now, this is a male aged 14 from southeast of the country. I was really upset to see my little sister get bullied. I went to pick her up with my dad, and while he was speaking to her teacher about her getting picked on, I turned around to talk to her and saw her getting pushed on the floor and getting verbal abuse from other pupils at her school. When I saw this, my heart dropped to my stomach. I ran over to her as fast as I could. I separated everybody and shouted at the people who were picking on her. I picked her up onto my shoulder and stormed off and told my dad about it. To this day, I make sure she is safe and that nothing bad ever happens to her. Female, aged 13, from London. I used to bully someone because my friends pulled me to do it with them, so I joined in. I felt really guilty, so I decided to stop, and they stopped too. And then we told our teachers, and I got 1 week without break or lunchtime. So there are some children, and I would like to think it's most children, who know it's morally wrong and are truly guilty, sorry, ashamed, whatever words you want to say, make them stop. And I think it just takes one strong person in a group of people to say, hang on a minute, this ain't right. Stop doing this, for them to follow them. Like it takes one strong person in the group to bully and drag all the sheep along with them. It takes that one strong person to say, no, this isn't right. If you're going to be my sheep, follow me and let's do the right thing. Yep. Okay, so it's because of my physical appearance and because I'm Asian that I am bullied. Sometimes people make fun of me and ruin my belongings, but I don't tell my parents. When I get bullied, I would have breakdowns and try to ditch classes. I would try to ignore the situation, but it only got worse. I would feel stressed and paranoid, and I was hoping I would survive another day of school and wear a smiley mask. Our kids should not have to do this. School should be a safe place. Home should be a safe place. We as parents, as adults, should be listening to what is happening to our children and stepping up and protecting them, either from being bullied or to step up and stop other people being bullied. Make sure your child is not a bystander. Make sure they become an upstander, guys. Let them show the way. It was horrible. I got bullied and turned away because I had different thoughts and opinions on things. Even the way I dress and how I like to talk, such as my makeup and hair. My closest friends turned me away so that they didn't get bullied. And the stories just go on, guys, and they're just heartbreaking. Physically punched and kicked and pushed for no reason at all. I didn't tell anyone because I thought it would go away, but it just kept going and affecting me. I told my form tutor and he sorted it out. This didn't happen again afterwards, but he hasn't owned up to it yet. Throughout school, I have had a tough time with making friends and being socially accepted. I feel like I am excluded all the time, and sometimes I even feel invisible. I get sent messages online telling me to kill myself and that the world will be a better place without me. And one day, I did try to kill myself because I just felt so unhappy and just didn't see what the point was anymore. Now I'm getting help with CAMS, and they are helping to deal and cope with my depression and anxiety due to bullying. That is absolutely horrific and absolutely disgusting that a child, age 16, but there are others here, guys, you know, from the age of, I don't know, 6 upwards, where children are being brought down to their knees. They're feeling suicidal. They've tried to commit suicide. Some have committed suicide, leaving their families distraught about what the hell is going on. But some of them didn't know what was going on for their children. So we need to have open dialogues with our children. We need to make sure that they are safe when they leave us. We need to make sure that if our child is a confident child, that they know how to stop bullying, how to be an upstander and not a bystander. Now, Rebecca Barry on this report, she's a psychotherapist. This is what she says, guys. She was worried because 40% of people who have been bullied said that they have suffered no impact. And this is really interesting. The idea that 40% of people recognise no effect of bullying concerns me. Bullying is traumatic, and when we are in trauma, sometimes we cut our feelings off and dissociate as a way of coping. I wonder if the 40% who say it hasn't affected them have disassociated from the events. Disassociating protects us from feeling too much and allows us to cope, to a point where we trick ourselves into believing that we are fine and that the bullying has no effect on us. Disassociating is a good short-term solution in protecting us from trauma. But the problem is that the feelings we are cutting away from tend to come back to bite us later on. Very often, I see people who are suffering with panic attacks and don't understand why. With a little digging, we can usually find the cause. Someone, for example, who has bullied at school and has started a new job may come across someone in the office who reminds them of a bullying perpetrator. A memory is triggered and the anxiety kicks in. And this is what I'm saying about the stress, the overwhelm, the brain going into fight, flight, freeze, flop, friend. When we are bullied, when we are abused, when we are in a violent relationship, when we undergo any kind of attack on ourselves. So now, what was really, really interesting to me, guys, was that quite a lot of people actually speak about bullying. So 65% spoke about it, 35% told no one. Now, when they asked the 35% why they didn't tell anyone, it was they were scared about making it worse, they were embarrassed, they felt that teachers didn't care, they thought that they wouldn't be taken seriously. They've said, I've reported it in the past and nothing happened. And they said, oh, well, I can deal with it myself. Yeah. Now, the perpetrators of bullying. So this report, so I'm just going to give you a quick rundown now. Our guest has just arrived, so I'll introduce her to you all in a little while. But perpetrators, how often do you bully? 32% said at least once per week, 45% said at least once per month, 11% said daily, 8% said several times per week. Now, the type of bullying that they dished out was 54% said verbal, 27% said intimidation, 23% said I started a rumour, 22% said I isolated the victim, 21% I attacked physically, and 20% said I cyberbullied. And then they were the perpetrators of the bullies. They were asked, how did bullying make you feel? 44% said guilty, 42% said angry, 36% said in control, 32% said upset, 29% said powerful, 25% said indifferent. That is alarming, because indifferent to me means they really don't grasp either being powerful or being not powerful. They're just completely just don't know. And I think that's quite a that one needs watching and needs digesting a bit more. 16% said numb and 9% said jealous. So this is perpetrators of bullying, guys. How does it make them feel? Now, how many people have you bullied? 36% said 1, 14% said 2, 10% said 3, 14% said, oh, I bullied more than 11 people. And then they were asked, why do you bully? Why do you bully? Again, this won't come as a shock to many of you. Why do you bully? They deserved it. I don't like them. It's funny. It helps me deal with my stress and my anger. I'm not happy. To make my friends laugh. because the victim is an easy target, to scare them, to prevent others from bullying me. It made me feel good about myself. I want what they have, to be noticed by others. I mean, it comes to something when our children think that they can go out and bully another individual because of these reasons. It's up to us as parents to start really teaching our children how to be kind, how to be respectful, and, you know, just, if you can't be kind and respectful of other people, just to walk away and leave people alone. That's what we need to start doing and teaching our kids. And we need to be role models and doing that ourselves as adults. Then we go into the bystanders, guys, in this report. How often do you witness bullying? 26% said, well, at least once a week. 50% said at least once a month. And again, the bullying that they saw was verbal, intimidation, exclusion, indirect bullying, physical assault, cyberbullying, and bullying through online gaming. And even the bystanders had an impact on them. They felt bad for the victim. They felt upset. They felt guilty. They were stressed out about it. They were scared. You know, most bystanders felt something, felt an emotion that made them think that bullying was morally wrong. However, they didn't intervene, or they didn't intervene to the extent that it needs to be intervened with. So 51% said they sometimes intervened, 17% said they always intervened, 23% said rarely, and 9% said never. And then they were asked, how did you intervene? Told the person to stop, I told an adult, I spoke to the victim, I attacked the perpetrator, which again isn't really one of the things that I want to promote, but sometimes it is the only thing that makes people stop. Now, some people said they were frightened of intervening because they didn't want to be bullied themselves. What happened when you intervened? They were asked. Well, the bullying stopped, the victim felt better, or the bullying continued, the bully got into trouble, I was told to mind my own business, others stood up to the bully when I said stop, I got bullied, I was physically attacked. But the higher percentages, guys, were the bullying stopped and the victim felt better. And then the bystanders were asked how they felt after they intervened. I felt good about myself. I became friends with the victim. The teachers said I'd done the right thing. I gained friends. A small percentage said they lost friends, and a small percentage said I ended up being bullied. But the higher percentages, I felt good. I became friends with the victim. I did the right thing. I gained friends. So this is what we need to be telling our children, that not to be a bystander, not to be someone that joins in, but to be an upstander and take a stance against it. Now, the ones that did intervene said they felt it was the right thing to do. They felt bad about the victim. They wanted to help. They wanted to take a stand. They were angry at the bully. Now, Professor Stein Bowman, let me just read you this, and then I'm going to play a tune or two, and then I'm going to introduce Lynn to you all. Professor Sherry Bowman, sorry, that was my handwriting, Sherry Bowman, says, recently there has been an increase in recognition that bystanders play an important role in the dynamic of bullying. We know that when bystanders intervene, they can be effective at stopping the bullying. The findings from this survey are unique in that we see both why youth do intervene and what stops them from doing so. It is encouraging to see that most people who intervene do so for moral reasons. The vast majority of those who intervened reported positive outcomes. Among those who do not intervene, the data confirms what many have suspected. They don't know what to do, and they worry about being a target themselves. The more witnesses who intervene, the stronger the message to perpetrators. For those who do not intervene because they believe it is not their business, we need to convey the message that bullying is everyone's business, because even witnessing bullying causes distress, and bullying pollutes our psychological and emotional environment. I couldn't have summed that up better myself, really. And as I said to you at the top of the show, guys, at the top of the show, was that bullying is a form of abuse. And abuse within the family home, whether it be mental, physical, emotional, or sexual, or all forms of abuse. Abuse within in a relationship, whether it be coercive control, whether it be domestic violence, whatever the label is you attach to it, is bullying, is abuse, is bringing someone down, is making them feel not 100% a human being, is eroding their self-esteem, is attacking their sense of self. It is not right, and it should not be tolerated. And we as adults should be role models for our children. We should be having conversations with our children about, not being bullies, standing up for children, or even us as adults, training ourselves to stick up for those who are being bullied or beaten up in the street, maybe. But making sure that we know what we're doing. Sometimes sticking up for somebody, especially if it's like a fight in the street and you're frightened of getting hurt yourself, is picking the phone up and calling the police. You're not being a snitch. You are not being a grass. You are being someone that is morally just in what they're doing, in protecting the person at the end of the verbal abuse, the physical abuse, the sexual abuse, or whatever abuse it is. That is where we need to be as a society. Okay, right, guys. If you're on Facebook Live, please go have a wee and tea break. I'm going to play a tune, and then I'm going to introduce Lynn to you all. Bear with me. So the music this week that I'm going to be playing is When the Going Gets Tough. If you're listening on the radio, it is coming. There you go. There you go, people. That was, she says, she's forgotten already, when the going gets tough. Just have a little break, and I think we're just going to have a little break every sort of like 15 minutes or so with a tune, just to break it up, because it's quite heavy stuff, and I can talk for England. Okay, so in the studio now we have my friend Lynn, and Lynn's just going to introduce herself, but I just need to make sure that I've got the camera in the right place. So I'm just switching the camera around. Yes, Lynn, we've got you in the right place. So I'm just going to move that to there so we can see your lovely face. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Fine, thank you. That's fine. So tell everybody who you are and why you're here.
My name is Lynn Collett, and I'm here because you invited me.
I did invite you indeed. Tell everybody a bit about your background, only what you want to share though.
I'm a survivor, child sexual abuse. It's taken me a very long time to be able to speak about it, very long time, through shame, just worrying really what other people would think. So it's just been a very, very long journey for me, but I'm getting there.
You are getting there. How did you know about what I was doing?
It wasn't direct, it was sort of indirect really. Through Facebook, I was on the Annalie website, and I think I met your sister.
Yeah.
Because we went to the same primary school, so we got chatting. I don't know how the connection sort of came about, but because I don't think I even realised that you were related. But there was just something that must have, I think it was through Diane's
Poetry, yes.
that I connected, that she had this similar background, and then it must have been said, or you, there was some connection, and I realised about you. So I think we started to chat, and I realised all the work that you did, and I was constantly saying, you know, please, if I can be involved in any way, if anything comes up, would love to, you know, be a part of something in this fight against abuse, child sexual abuse. And I think then you invited me along to the course that you ran, and I came along to that, and then thereafter I've just done the Truth Project. So yeah, some real steps, massive steps for me.
Because this has been, what, in a matter of 12 months?
Yes.
All of this has happened.
Exactly.
Wow. When did you come out and tell your family, Lynn, about what had happened to you? When did they all know?
They didn't. My mum knew when I was 13.
Okay.
It came out. Not me. I didn't. I told somebody else, and he then told his mum, who was a friend, and the mother rang my mum, and then it was all hushed up. It was all just swept under the carpet, and I was more than happy to for it to not go any further at that age, 13. And so I think it was quite a few more years. And I think my sister was quite sort of instrumental in telling the rest of the family, but it was not accepted. It was, you know, I was told that I was exaggerating, or that, you know, I deserved it in some way. So it's taken a very, very long time, and even to this day, you know, I've got whole members of my family that are not speaking to me. I'm not saying it's directly to do with this, but it's indirectly. The patterns, the dysfunction, it is still operating within my family. And I've come forward now, and I'm standing strong against, you know, anybody and everybody, shining a light on this. And of course it's rocking the boat within my family, so they're all busy trying to, you know, shut me up again. because it's just it looks bad on them, and I'm not trying to make anybody feel bad. That's not my. I'm not trying to do that. But what I'm trying to do is, I think, get recognition that I wasn't helped. I was just made to feel even more ashamed as I was when it first happened. And it's just taken me a whole lifetime to get to this point, and I'm certainly not going to stop now.
And you shouldn't have to either.
No.
Okay, excuse me a minute. So much that you've just said there about your family not wanting you to speak out, and I think that comes down to reputation as well. We're talking about the reputation of the family, and we're not talking about just we're talking families from all cultures. They don't want this perceived shame to be brought on the family. And institutions, they all want to protect their names as well. So just bringing in a few other things here while Lynn is talking about this reputation. For example, Lynn just spoke about the inquiry. Now, the inquiry are doing a public hearing into the Nottingham care homes in October. And the Nottingham CSA survivors, who have got their own group, who have been lobbying, who have been saying to the councils for years and years and years now, this happened, but you are not acknowledging it. You are putting your reputation before the safeguarding of children, and now as adults you're still not listening to us. It's taken their very last breath, and so many people have been mentally and physically impacted. Some people have taken their lives, and only yesterday did the council put on their website, deep within their website, embedded in an apology to all victims and survivors of abuse that happened within the Nottingham care homes. And it's despicable because they didn't even have the front to make it a public announcement. It was embedded. So that makes the victim survivors feel like they've got to fight for everything, every bit of truth that they want out there heard, and fighting for their support and all of that. It's hard work, such hard work. Now, when you some of the family members are not talking to you, some are.
Yeah.
Did you? I know you've got children. When did you tell your children about the abuse you suffered? How did you, and how much did you tell them?
It wasn't me so much. My husband, he told them bits and pieces as they were growing up, which I didn't agree with, because I didn't feel that it was appropriate. But that's what he felt at the time was the right thing to do. I don't know. I was hypersensitive about their protection at all times. Probably a bit. I was a bit OTT, maybe, I don't know. I didn't care, but I was very aware of patterns. I was very aware that, the chances of someone being abused could then go on to be the abuser. I was terrified of that because I kept thinking, I honestly thought if I showed or I felt any signs of wanting to inflict harm on my children or any other children, I would have to kill myself. That is how I felt. So I just armed myself with knowledge and tried to learn as much as I possibly could, to make absolutely sure that I wasn't going to pass it down to my children. But they have, I can't say they haven't been harmed, not physically, but mentally. They've been scarred because I'm a survivor, and it's taken me this long to realise what that actually means. How it infiltrates your very being in every aspect, academically, in every which way it affects you. And if you're not aware of it, you can't do anything about it. So it did affect my children. I was very, I was always on autopilot, I think is the right word. I was always distant. And they maybe at times, and they have told me this, that they felt that I wasn't there. I was physically there, but I wasn't emotionally, because I was always on hyper alert, hyper vigilant, and always looking, worrying, anxious.
So never in the moment.
Never in the moment. I could never enjoy the moment, and that has had a big effect on them. And they're still, both of them, quite. They have anxious problems and abandonment. They both have abandonment issues, which hurts me, because I never ever wanted to inflict anything onto them.
What does an abandonment issue look like?
Well, I have it as well, and it's the feeling of not being wanted, not being loved. So if you're not present, you can physically be there in a room with a child, but you're elsewhere. Your mind's elsewhere, your eyes are elsewhere, you're not engaging. So they don't feel like they are wanted.
That's just really struck a chord with me, because I think maybe a lot of adult survivors have or are experiencing exactly that you've just explained. And this is what I mean about breaking the cycle of not passing on the impact down to our next generation. If we are not aware of what we're doing and the impact that we may be having on our children, this is a huge thing, isn't it? I think that's why this show and books out there, so I'm going to get you to recommend the books that you've read, books out there that can help us as survivors be better parents, I think are absolutely crucial. Do you agree?
Totally. I mean, it's something I recognised very, very early on, that intellectually I had to understand. I had to understand about myself, and I had to understand about abuse. Why does it happen? Was I going to pass it on? So I read books. That is how I read every single book I could get my hands on, just to educate myself, I think, in order to learn as much as I possibly could, and to start to heal parts of myself that I didn't even realise were broken. The only thing I will say is that was all more intellectual. So I was healing the intellectual, trying to understand that part of myself. But what I wasn't able to do, and only until recently, was understand about being in the moment. I still used the technique that I learned as a child to survive, was to zone out. I literally cut myself off from what was happening to me, and I would zone into something, anything that was in a room or wherever I was, so that I wasn't aware. And whilst that helped me to survive, when you're an adult, that is not a good technique, because it means you're not in the present moment. You're always somewhere else. And that's taken me a very long time to find something that works to stop me doing that. And I still do it. I'm so hardwired that if I get anxious, or if I get triggered, any kind of trigger, I straight away, I'm not there. I can look, my body's there, but my mind's not. I'm completely somewhere else. So it means that you can't remember things. Someone will say to me, I told you yesterday, and you think, well, I don't remember that. I have no recollection of that conversation. And then I try to think back, well, what was I doing? Was I anxious, or was I, uptight about something? And quite often it is. And I realise that I wasn't actually there. I was somewhere else. I was thinking about something completely different.
Wow. Wow. So there's a lot of learning in what you've just said for a lot of people that are listening and watching, because they can start looking at their own, what goes on for them, and maybe putting things in place for them. What books would you recommend to people that you have found really important?
Gosh, each year of my life, I've read so many different books because I've been at different stages. But some of the ones that really stand out for me was The Inner Child by Penny Parks.
Okay.
Now this was a book that you actually deal with rescuing. I think it's called Rescuing the Inner Child. And it teaches you or shows you how to do work on yourself. And I remember doing this work with the book. There's all instructions of how to do it, and it was quite, I've never forgotten it, because when you look in the mirror, you're looking at an adult, and what that tells you to do in the book is to get a photo of yourself in and around the age that you were when the abuse took place. And that's very, very hard, because you look at that child and you just think, how is that possible? So that was one book that had a profound effect on me. A New Earth is a book by Eckhart Tolle, or Tolle, it's Tolle. That's kind of been like a sort of almost like a Bible that I've dipped in and out. I've read it 2 or 3 times, and it talks about the pain body, and it had a sort of a diagram of this pain body that was almost like a swag bag that was over your shoulder that you're carrying around. This is all your problems. This is all of your angst is in this bag, but really you're carrying it on your shoulders.
Yeah.
And what this book describes is how it's layers of problems, and for every year of your life, when you don't let go of your problems, they just build up, so that your swag bag, your pain body, just gets heavier and heavier, so that you're literally, your shoulders are dragging along the floor. And what it's trying to show you is the importance of letting go.
Yeah.
Of all of your pain, of just getting, but you have to recognize it first. That's the hardest part.
Yeah.
And this book delves into all of those issues. That was a very profound book. Another one was The Celestine Prophecy. This was more of a fiction book, but I don't know, it was about the journey, a person's journey, and it just had a massive effect on me. And it was about vibrations and energies,
Yeah.
which I had been studying for quite a while, and for people that haven't studied that type of thing, it might sound
blow their brains.
But, I've delved into everything,
yeah,
in order to try to understand myself
and find something that works for you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I even signed up once for Bible classes for 6 months, because I thought, well, if there is a God, I think I'd like to understand that as well. So I've gone along and joined all these different things. It's so that I can make a conscious choice for myself in what do I believe, what works for me.
Lynn, before I move on, have you ever been bullied at school?
No.
Or have your children been bullied at school?
My children were bullied at school.
Okay. Both of them been bullied at school. What happened to them, without giving away any names, and how did you deal with it yourself? Can you remember?
Yes, I can. My daughter was the first one. She went to an all-girls school, and there was a particular group that just kept on picking on her. And I tried very hard to, each day build up her self-esteem, and to, say that, she was a beautiful girl, and just try to support her the best that I possibly could. And in the end, she rang me one day herself, crying, sobbing down the phone, and said, "Please, Mum, come and get me." And I did. I ran up to the school, and she was in a really, really bad way. And I could see she'd been crying for ages, and I just took one look at her and I said, "That's it. You will never be coming back to this school." And I just took her out, and the school said to me, "You can't do this." And I just said, "I've repeatedly told you my daughter was being bullied and you've done nothing to protect her, so I'm taking her out of school." And they said, "You can't do this." And I said, "Well, you just watch me." And I did. And I kept her home until I found a good enough school. And that was it. And what I wanted to get through to my daughter was that I was there for her and that I was going to protect her, and I took her seriously. She says to me that I didn't do it soon enough, but how do you know? I did it when I did it, when I felt that it was the time to intervene, and that was it. I got her into another school.
And was she happy at the next school?
She was happier.
Yeah.
She did still have some bullying.
Yeah.
But I always dealt with it. I tried to always deal with everything as seriously as it was said to me.
Yeah.
I went and saw teachers and so on and so forth. But I think it goes back to, again, that the basic ingredients of parenting were missing. So it goes back to what happened to me, that I wasn't able to give them something because of what had happened in my childhood. And so both my children were open to bullying, unfortunately.
Do you truly feel that?
I do.
Okay.
I do feel that.
Yeah. And I think that is one of the reasons, guys, why I wrote Parenting Without Tears book that you can download off of Amazon just for £1 or two. I think it's just £1. You can download this guide, because as survivors of childhood abuse specifically, we are not given the tools that we need to grow up as well-rounded individuals, knowing everything that we need to know. No parent knows everything. Parenting, you learn as you go along, but if you are brought up in a loving, nurturing environment, then you are given certain tools that you're not given if you're not. So that when you do have children, you are streets ahead of those of us that didn't have that kind of guidance and learning and encouragement and empowerment and all of that stuff. So that was written specifically to help survivors of abuse become better parents. And I'm not saying we're not good parents, because we are good parents. However, we do need to make sure that we are breaking the cycle and not passing our stuff down to the next generation, as Lynn has described and I've described week after week after week. Now, your son, what happened to your son?
Well, I got him into an all-boys school. Because he had problems in primary school, and I recognised that there was problems. I was always up the school trying to deal with it, and so I thought, well, going to an all-boys school would be good for him. Well, it wasn't. He was bullied. He came home every day with glasses broken, bag stolen, trousers that were split, and just horrendous things. And he spent most of his first year with a secretary who took him under her wing, and he was constantly ringing me. I did act far quicker than I did with my daughter, because she had already been through it. I thought, he's not going to stay in this school. So I took him out and kept him home with me. Until I got him into a mixed school, and he was so much better, much better.
Good. But it's learning, isn't it? Hindsight's a wonderful thing for all of us, but it's the learning as well. So with your second child, you knew the signs more straight away, you knew how to deal with it better, and you took the action on it. And that's what life's about, isn't it? We don't get things right all of the time, but as long as we keep striving to try and get things right is really important.
Yes.
Now, guys, I want to talk about now smacking. And I don't know what Lynn's opinion is on smacking, and I don't want to put on the spot, but what I want to do is just talk about the law just generally, and what was in the news last week, and why I think that any violence that is shown to children can then lead on to other violence. So that's why I am against smacking. And I'm going to be open, honest and upfront. I've said this before on this radio show. Yes, I have tapped like that my children on the hand, maybe twice each of them throughout their childhood, for running in the road or touching something hot just to protect them. But the reason why I'm saying I'm against smacking is because lots of people do not understand that smacking is a light tap, and it's not a cane, an instrument, the hand, that actually makes marks or actually inflicts physical harm and mental emotional distress on a child. And again, I'm not here to demonize anybody. All I'm saying is what my opinion is and why I've got this opinion. Now, the law on smacking, downloaded this from the Child Law Advice website, and it says it's unlawful for a parent or carer to smack their child except where this amounts to reasonable punishment. The defence is laid down in Section 58, Children's Act 2004. But what reasonable punishment means is a big question mark, because it's not actually defined in legislation. Whether a smack amounts to reasonable punishment will depend on the circumstances of each case, taking into consideration facts like the age of the child and the nature of the smack. There are strict guidelines covering the use of reasonable punishment, and it will not be possible to rely on the defence if you use severe physical punishment on your child, which amounts to wounding, actually bodily harm, grievous bodily harm, or child cruelty. When will smacking become a criminal offence? A parent can be charged with a criminal offence if they harm their child under the following certain offences. Wounding and cause grievously bodily harm, assaulting, occasioning actual bodily harm, under Section 1 of the Children and Young Persons Act 1933, and cruelty to persons under 16. Determining what charge will be made depends on the harm caused to the child. The Director of Public Prosecutions for England and Wales has produced a charging standard in order to help prosecutors to determine the appropriate offence in a case. The guidance has suggested that common assault is where injuries amount to no more than the following: grazes, scratches, abrasions, minor bruising, swellings, reddening of the skin. The charging standard goes on to say that there may be cases where the injuries suffered by a victim would usually amount to common assault, but due to the presence of serious aggravating features, they could be more appropriately be charged as actually bodily harm. One such aggravating feature is whether the victim is a child. Even in such cases, however, prosecutors are nonetheless required to bear in mind that the definition of assault occasioning actually bodily harm requires the injury to be more than transient and trifling. Then it goes on to say what is actually bodily harm, ABH, what is grievous bodily harm, GBH, and this is what the NSPCC say. It can be tempting to think a smack sorts out incidents like disobedience and biting. However, it does nothing to teach your child how you want him or her to behave. Instead, it gives a bad example of how to handle strong emotions. It may lead children to hit or bully others. It may encourage children to lie or hide feelings to avoid smacking. It can make defiant behaviour worse, so discipline gets even harder. it leads to a resentful and angry child and damages family relationships if it continues for a long time. All parents have behaved in ways they regret at times, shouting or smacking. If it happens, say you are sorry, make up and try again. This teaches the child a valuable lesson. Now, calls to ban smacking. There is huge pressure from different organisations in the UK to change the law relating to reasonable punishment. Organisations such as the NSPCC and 11 Million campaign are asking for a complete ban on reasonable punishment. Now, in the news this week, smacking children should be banned to protect mental health, psychologists say. Hitting children as a form of punishment may encourage them to behave in a more aggressive way. Psychologists are calling for smacking of children in the family home to be outlawed due to the effect it can have on mental health. A motion has been put forward to the Trades Union Congress, TUC, from the Association of Educational Psychologists, AEP, urging the government to acknowledge that physical punishment can have negative long-term effects on a child's development. Parents and carers are currently legally allowed to smack children lightly if it can be described as reasonable punishment, as outlined in Section 58 of the Children's Act 2004. However, psychologists who have backed the ban state that hitting is never an effective method of disciplining a child, no matter the circumstances. Corporate punishment became illegal in British state schools in 1986, but remained legal in private schools until 1998 in England and Wales, until 2000 in Scotland, and until 2003 in Northern Ireland. Okay, hang on a minute. Mr. Hoo-Hoo. John Drazik, President of the AEP, outlined how smacking impacts a child's mental health and perpetuates damaging messages about violence. Again, children may become more aggressive and act in a violent manner. And there are several countries where a full ban on smacking children is already in place, and this includes Sweden, Ireland, Spain, Germany and Portugal. Scotland and Wales have put motions forward to ban smacking and doesn't understand why England hasn't followed suit. So I would love your views on smacking as a means of discipline, if you're brave enough to share them, or if you want to PM me, that will be fantastic. But I truly believe, growing up in a domestic violence household, being beaten very regularly by 4 caregivers made me very angry, made me volatile. Bullying at school heightened all of this. I then lost my temper, and I nearly ended up putting a girl in hospital because of my temper, because everything came on top of me. And that poor girl, again, I wrote this in my book, she got everything that day. She could have quite easily have gotten killed by me, because I had no control over my temper whatsoever. When I did tap my children on the hand on those few occasions, I felt so guilty, I felt ashamed, and I vowed never, ever, ever to do it again. Because I think, personally, that violence breeds violence, and I hate any kind of confrontation. I hate any kind of violence. I'm against all kinds of violence, and I really do think that there are other ways of disciplining. Discipline, the word actually means teach, it does not mean beat. And there are other ways of dealing with things. Again, it's down to us as individuals to educate ourselves and spend good quality time with our children, praise them, teach them, and explain why things are wrong or right, and praise them for doing good, and just don't beat them for doing things wrong, but discipline, teach them why things are wrong. Now, again, I just want to add here before I go back to Lynn to see if she's got any views on any of this, or you could just say, I don't want to discuss this, it's up to you. I went and did some training with some soon-to-be social workers. Now, most of the social workers in the room, the students, were from a different culture. Now, in this other culture, that is not my culture, the individuals in the room laughed at me when I said smacking was illegal. Like, smacking in the sense of beating was illegal, because that is illegal. They laughed at me and they said, we were brought up, we were beaten, that is how we were brought up, and that is what I do to my child. And I said to them, well, what you're doing is illegal. And I was never invited back to teach any more social work students. But if we've got social workers that are students and then becoming qualified, who believe that beating, and I'm not talking about a little light tap, but beating is normal and okay, we've got a serious problem waiting to happen, because we all need to know exactly where we stand with this. And at the end of the day, it does look like if Scotland and Wales are going to go down the no smacking route at all, to get away from what is a light smack, what is a medium smack, what is a hard smack, what is beating, a zero tolerance approach to smacking, then we all know where we stand. That is my view on it. That is my view. Do you have a view?
I
Lynn?
do.
Come on, Len. Let's hear it.
I think that smacking is, we should not smack our children. I'll put my hands up and say that I did, I think a couple of occasions, really provoked, or that they ran away across a road or something like that.
Yeah, something serious.
Yeah, something really bad, and I smacked them. And I felt, I think I cried with them.
Yeah.
Because I felt so terrible.
Yeah.
But totally, just disagree with smacking. And I think that you're not just smacking them. It has much more implications than just that, because it shuts them up, it shuts them down, it breaks their spirit, their
makes them
self-esteem.
fearful.
Yeah. And I was terrified as a child of my mum, absolutely petrified. So much so that if there was something that went wrong, or we did something wrong, and my mum said, well, who did it? I used to pass out because I was so afraid.
Right.
And that's what smacking does.
Yeah.
It makes you afraid, so that when the worst thing happened to a child, who did I have to turn to? Nobody.
No one.
And my mum in later years actually said once, well, it never did you any harm, did it? And I said, well, it did. It did do us grave harm, because I couldn't turn to anybody when the very worst thing happened. And that's what I believe that smacking does.
Yeah, you're so spot on. But again, guys, just having this conversation, and Lynn and me, same age, roughly. Our parents beat us. We thought that was the way we discipline our children, because we wasn't taught anything else. But we didn't beat our children. We gave them a light smack because of what they were doing, i.e. they were touching something that was too hot, or they ran into the road or something that was dangerous to their lives. We felt bad. It triggered us. So we tried to break the cycle and find a different way of dealing with it. And I think that as we move through understanding the impact of mental, physical, sexual harm, abuse does to our mental and physical health, this is just an involvement. And we're evolving on to making sure that we keep our children as safe as possible. But that means there's new learning to be had for all of us as parents. How do we then discipline our children to make sure that we are not destroying their self-esteem? that we're not keeping them fearful of speaking to us and, you know, being able to talk to us about, as Lynn said, you know, when the abuse happened to her, she had no one to turn to speak to anyone, because that door had been shut. Because whenever we was naughty, we didn't want to speak out because we would just get silenced and shut up again.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's it in a nutshell, isn't it?
Yeah,
and that's why we feel that smacking, zero tolerance to bullying, zero tolerance to abuse, zero tolerance to smacking, finding new ways of dealing with our ways of parenting. Now, I've got this from Family Lives website, guys, and it's called Discipline. Information and advice for parents and families. Now, discipline is about teaching children how to behave, as well as helping them understand the consequences of their behaviour. Children need clear boundaries to feel secure. By disciplining them from an early age, we provide them with the opportunity of understanding our values, as well as what is expected of them within the family, school and wider community. Discipline is not about punishment. Ideally, it begins from the earliest stages in a child's development, with parents and adult carers helping children to understand what is right and wrong, whilst creating a secure place from which to experiment and learn about life. If discipline has not been part of a child's life from the start, it can still be implemented. It's important that a child's main carers are consistent in their approach to discipline. This creates greater security for your child, and it's helpful if other important people in your child's life can share and reinforce your view. So, tips. Set out to help, not punish. As they get older, trust your children to find their own solutions. Listen and negotiate where appropriate. Praise positive behaviour. Criticise the behaviour, not the child. Look after yourself so that you are not overreacting due to stress. We've all been there. Treat your child with respect and they will learn to do the same. Remember, role model. They will copy you. They will learn and listen to what is going on, what is being said, and what is not being said. Use humour when at all possible. Don't be afraid to ask for help when you need it. So there's some tips and tools and strategies. And you can download that, guys, from the website that I just said, Family Lives website. Okay. Family Lives website, which is a registered charity. Just trying to find their www.familylives.org.uk, and there's loads and loads of information on there that you can get to help you if you want to go that way. Right, guys, we've literally got 10 minutes left, and I want to talk about what can we do differently, how do we move forwards, and we've sort of like talked about that throughout, really, but I just want to wrap it all up. Parenting, being positive role models, because children will learn from their environment. They will emulate their parents. We did, and we got some things wrong, but we've put it right because we've become educated. We didn't like how we felt, and we didn't like how it made our children feel. So we are trying to break that cycle and change things. No smacking, discipline in a different way. Download your thing from the Family Lives Matter. And education, it's absolutely key in all of this. Right. So, how can we learn to be different? How can we help each other not to suffer in pain and not to suffer in silence? You have to be responsible for yourself and your actions. You need to be more mindful of what the person who is different to you is going through. We need to start looking out for each other. We need to make sure that we're not excluding anyone. So if you are a young person at school, for example, you need to start inviting those lone children into your friendship circle. We need to make sure that we know what the school bullying policy says and what the process is to report bullying if we see it. If we see a bully in action, and that can be in the playground, in the home, or in a relationship, an adult relationship, we can tell them to stop. And if this culture is adopted by all of us, then it really is an easy thing to implement, but we need to start practicing it. Now, bullies and abusers, perpetrators, they thrive on silence. They thrive on making people fearful of them. And if we all just stand to the side, be a bystander and not an upstander, and we do nothing, we are sending out a clear message to the bully, to the abuser, to the perpetrator, that what they are doing is okay, and it is not okay. We need to learn about each other's differences. There is not one person in this world that is the same. We have different DNA, different cultures, backgrounds, religions, abilities. Some may be academic, some may be artistic, some may be practical. We all have different experiences in life. And when we make true, loving, supportive friendships, relationships, all of these differences should be celebrated and not picked apart. We don't have to be friends with everybody. In life, there's just some people you don't get on with for many reasons, but that doesn't mean we have to be superior or better than them. If we have no words to say, no kind words to say, or we just don't gel with people, then we can just smile, or we can just walk on by, because that costs nobody anything. So just because someone is different to you, if you can't appreciate their differences, you need to learn to leave them alone, let them be. We never know how much stress that person is under. And if they are being bullied, if they are being abused, this or what you're doing could have an even more devastating effect upon them. So that is all that I want to say on this subject. I've got a poem to read if I've got time in a minute, but I do want to go back to Lynn and see if there's anything that she wants to add after me reading all of that out.
Yes, I think what I'd like to say is never be afraid to intervene. I have done it many times now, and I couldn't care less what that person thought of me. If I think that someone is being bullied, harmed, or anything like that, I have actually knocked on doors. Because I've heard somebody screaming and shouting, and I thought a child was being hit. If I was wrong, then I'll apologise. But if I was right, I may have stopped that child from being harmed. And I've even done it in the street. If I've seen a person smacking a child and I've been told, I've been sworn at, but I don't care, because I would never want another child to feel like I did as when I was little. So I will always intervene and stand up for what I believe in. And I think that's my message.
Brilliant.
For everyone.
Thank you. Is there anything else that you want to say that you've not had the chance to say?
Probably, and I'll remember it on the way home.
And then you write it down and you can come back, okay? All right, because I'm sure there's loads that you've got to say. Now, I wanted to speak to Lynn really about overcoming abuse as well, and I'll be covering that next week. And as I said, I might get Lynn, see if she's free next week to come back, because Lynn has a fantastic way of dealing with her abuse, if that's how you want to phrase it. And I'm not going to give it away now. I'm going to invite Lynn back to talk about overcoming abuse, overcoming bullying next week. I think we need to really dedicate a whole show on how we deal with leaving the scars behind, how we start to heal, how you know, we're all different and there's different ways of healing. So I think the whole show next week is going to be about overcoming and or living with what we've gone through. And I'm going to talk from a child's perspective, an adolescent's perspective, and an adult's perspective. Okay, that's next week's show. So I'm just hoping, I'm looking at Lynn, I'm just hoping that she can come back next week. I just want to finish up with a poem that I wrote, guys. How dare they, how dare you? How dare they tell you you're stupid, you're ugly, you're thick, you will never amount to anything. Everyone hates you, no one loves you, no one wants to be your friend. Don't look at me, you're not worthy. How dare they abuse you mentally, emotionally, physically, sexually as a child, as an adolescent, as an adult? How dare they rob you of your self-worth, your identity? How dare they try to destroy everything you have worked for with their bullying, with their mean words, with their abuse? How dare you believe what they say, even for 1 second? Not believe in you. Sell yourself short because of others' jealousies and insecurities. Explain yourself to others. Not see your own potential. Not see what a kind, caring, compassionate and beautiful person you are. I dare you to follow your dreams, your path, your passion, your purpose, to be you, your authentic you, to love yourself for all you are, the good and not so good, your compassion, your empathy, your honesty, your integrity. Life is too short and you only have one life. Who are you trying to live it for? Others or yourself? And what can you do to help others? Be brave. Take a leap of faith. On the other side of fear is a life of opportunity, love and happiness. Thanks for listening, guys. Cheers. See you next week for the overcoming bullying, abuse, impact on mental and physical health and wellness. Thank you for joining me. I'll answer your questions later. Let's say bye to Lynn for the last time.
Bye-bye.